This bill would have fixed a giant mess with Florida HOAs, and then it just vanished. No headlines, no press conference, not a word from lawmakers. Just gone, like it never even existed. House Bill 983 was supposed to crack down on shady HOAs, or homeowners associations, and give people more control of their properties by finally letting cops investigate HOA fraud. It had steam. It passed 2 committees with zero drama. Democrats were in, Republicans were in. Everyone seemed on board, and then poof, it died. In this video, I'll show you how this bill would have taken down corrupt HOA boards, who's quietly working to make sure this bill never passes, and the simple step you can take to make sure HOA boards are held accountable. Let's jump in. If you live in Florida, odds are you got an HOA. We got close to 50,000 of them statewide, more than almost any other state except California. So yeah, this is a big deal here. And let's be real, if you're in one of those neighborhoods, it probably feels like you got a second boss living on your street. You're already paying your mortgage and your taxes, and then you got this extra layer of rules and fees slapped on top by your HOA. In theory, it's supposed to keep the community clean and orderly, which makes sense, but in practice, it feels more like a mini dictatorship where a handful of board members get to decide what's allowed on your own property. And they can fine you for the dumbest stuff. Wrong paint color on your front door? That's a fine. Leave your trash can out too long? That's another fine. They actually fined a guy $1,000 for putting a decorative red tile in his driveway. And no, I'm not making that up. Then there's the infamous gnome case. A woman put out a few garden gnomes, you know, those creepy little statues. The HOA said, nope, that's against the rules. But she refused to take them down, so they kept fining her. But she wouldn't give up. Eventually, they started threatening to take her house over gnomes, dude. That's the kind of nonsense we're talking about. People think when they buy a house, they're in charge. But in an HOA, not really. These boards can fine you, restrict you, even sue you. And most homeowners have zero real power to push back. You can't just vote them out. You got to deal with complicated recall rules and legal hurdles. That's why people are so frustrated. These HOAs were supposed to protect neighborhoods, but more and more, they just seem like bullies hiding behind bylaws. So Florida finally said, we've had enough, and lawmakers stepped in to fix the whole HOA mess. House Bill 983 was the state's big swing at reining in out-of-control associations. It came from Rep. Juan Carlos Porras, a Republican out of Miami, and had a solid group of lawmakers backing it. The whole idea? Stop letting HOAs act like their own little governments and give regular people a shot at actually running their neighborhoods. Sounds good, right? Porras called it the most American bill in this committee. And yeah, he wasn't wrong. He said it's about fixing one of the most unrepresentative parts of local life, homeowners associations. The bill laid out a bunch of common sense reforms. First up, recalls. Right now, it's nearly impossible to boot a bad board member unless you're willing to navigate a legal obstacle course. HB 983 would have changed that. If the majority of homeowners want someone gone, they're gone. Simple. Next, it forced HOAs to be honest with buyers. You'd have to get all the important records and documents before signing a contract, and it basically gave them a 5-day cancellation window. So people don't move in and suddenly find out about surprise fees, strict rules, or secret laws. But here's the heavy hitter. The bill let actual law enforcement step in when HOAs were suspected of fraud or abuse. Instead of letting the HOA investigate itself, which, let's be real, never works, the cops could audit the books and hold people accountable. That's a huge deal. There was also a transparency piece. HOAs would be required to post meeting notices and agendas online 2 weeks in advance. So no more last-minute decisions in secret. And anyone who wants to run for the board, they couldn't be blocked by one of those shady nominating committees. Everyone gets a fair shot. The point of all this was to make HOAs less shady and more answerable to the homeowners who actually live in them. It's the kind of bill that could have flipped the power dynamic and made people feel like they finally had a say. And if you've ever felt like your HOA was getting out of hand, wait until you hear what some of them are really doing. This isn't just about bad landscaping rules or grumpy board members. We're talking straight up fraud, big time. And most of it goes unchecked until it's too late. First up, we got the hammocks in Miami-Dade. Total disaster. A whole group of board members was arrested for stealing millions. Yeah, millions from the community. They created fake companies, sent fake invoices, and funneled the cash right back into their own pockets. And get this, they jacked up HOA fees while they were doing it all. In the end, they made off with over $6 million before anybody stopped them. How does that even happen? Then there's a case in Tarpon Springs. Jamie Fonville worked as an accounting manager for a company that ran nearly 60 HOAs. She was cutting herself fake checks and cashing them. No one noticed, and over time, she pocketed around $754,000 and blew it on groceries, credit cards, and Tampa Bay Bucks tickets. Meanwhile, the people in those neighborhoods thought that their dues were going towards maintenance, not box seats at a football game. And don't forget Seminole County. A property manager named Tammy Morrison helped herself to $437,000 from her HOA's bank account. She used it for rent, car repairs, and handed out cash to family. The neighborhood left wondering where the hell their money went. These aren't isolated screw-ups. This stuff's happening all over because nobody's watching the watchers. And that's exactly why bills like HB 983 matter. HOAs can't keep policing themselves while homeowners keep paying the bill. That's why this bill was such a big deal. It had real teeth. Homeowners needed it. It had support on both sides. So what the hell happened? Why did it just disappear? Here's how it works in Florida. Before a bill gets a full vote, it's got to pass through several committees. Each one's like a checkpoint. If the chair of any committee doesn't schedule it for a hearing, that's it. The bill stalls out, no debate, no vote, no explanation. It just dies quietly when the session ends. That's exactly what happened to HB 983. It had momentum. First, it passed the Civil Justice and Claims Subcommittee. Then, the Housing, Agricultural, and Tourism Subcommittee. Both times, it got unanimous support. Not a single no vote. Lawmakers from both parties said, let's do it. Everyone thought it was heading to the floor for a full vote. But then, it landed in the House Judiciary Committee, and nothing. No hearing, no discussion. It sat on the shelf, and on June 16, 2025, time ran out and the bill officially died. The worst part? Nobody owned up to it. Not one lawmaker came out against it. No statement, no reason. The chair of that committee, Rep. Tommy Gregory, had the power to schedule it and didn't. Maybe he didn't care. Maybe somebody asked him to bury it. Either way, he killed the bill by doing nothing. So yeah, this thing didn't lose in a vote, it got ghosted. And that's how way too many good bills die in Tallahassee, while the people they're supposed to protect are left hanging. Now, nobody's out there saying, I hate homeowners' rights, but trust me, there's real pushback happening behind the scenes. Groups like the Community Associations Institute, CAI for short, represent HOA boards and the companies that manage them. Now, we don't know for sure if they lobbied against HB 983 specifically, but they've been known to push back on bills like this in the past, ones that bring more transparency and more accountability to HOAs. And it makes sense why. This bill would have forced HOAs to open up their books, follow fair election rules, and let police investigate shady behavior. That kind of oversight threatens their control. So yeah, it wouldn't be surprising if groups like CAI were quietly trying to stall this thing. And that's where lobbyists come in. These are people who get paid big money to meet with lawmakers and sway votes. Their whole job is to convince politicians that bills like this are dangerous. They show up at their offices and say stuff like, this is gonna lead to lawsuits. It'll make things harder for HOAs. It'll drive up costs, and that's enough to make some lawmakers back off because they don't want to lose donors or piss off a group with deep pockets. But you know who's not at those meetings? You, the people who actually live in these neighborhoods, the ones paying the dues, dealing with the fines, watching their boards run wild. You don't get a lobbyist, you just get ignored. That's what makes this so maddening. This bill wasn't controversial, it wasn't dangerous, but it threatened the wrong people's power. And that's all it takes for something to quietly disappear in Tallahassee. And the ones left holding the bag, always the homeowners. But here's the great news. HB 983 didn't make it this time, but that doesn't mean it's gone for good. It can absolutely come back. And if enough people raise hell, it probably will. Florida's next legislative session starts in January 2026, which is when lawmakers actually debate and vote on bills. But here's what most people don't realize. The work starts way before that. lawmakers begin drafting new bills around September and October. That's when deals get made, language gets hammered out, and decisions happen behind the scenes. So if you want this bill or something like it to come back stronger, now's the time to call your representative and tell them, I want HB 983 reintroduced, and this time, don't let it die. And yes, you can absolutely call. It's not weird. In fact, it's one of the most powerful things you can do. Here's how to find your state rep. Go to this link right here, and I'll put the description below this video. Enter your address and city and decide if you're a robot or not. And then, boom, your state house representative will pop up with all the info to contact them. Call them, email them, tell your neighbors to do the same, because here's the reality. If they don't hear from you, they're gonna assume nobody cares. And if nobody cares, the lobbyists win. Again, the same people who buried this bill will keep doing it unless voters speak up. So if HOA reform is important to you, don't wait for somebody else to fix it. Flood their inbox, light up the phone lines, make it impossible for them to pretend that this issue doesn't matter. Now, HOA reform isn't the only big thing going on in Florida right now. Click here to learn why Florida's property tax war is getting ugly. DeSantis is pissed at local politicians, and he's pushing hard to end property taxes in Florida. But there's some high-powered people behind the scenes fighting him on it. Who's gonna win? Click here to find out.